At exactly 7:42 a.m., on June 11, 2025, a dim amber glow flickered across the control screens inside a small underground operations room carved beneath a remote Ukrainian coastline. The room was silent except for the hum of cooling fans and the steady rhythm of fingers tapping against a metallic console. 4 operators stood around a single pilot who leaned forward, wearing a pair of tightly fitted FPV goggles. His call sign was Boulder, a veteran specialist who had flown more than 100 missions deep inside contested waters. For weeks, intelligence teams had monitored activity on a Russian-held offshore structure known as Platform Theta, a massive industrial installation converted into a forward military site. Satellite imagery had shown new equipment transported overnight, new communications antennas welded to its upper deck, and an unusual increase in personnel shifts. Theta had become a hub for surveillance and maritime control, extending Russian influence deep into waters Ukraine sought to reclaim. Today's mission was meant to change that. Inside the bunker, Boulder exhaled once slowly, waiting for the final green signal from the operations captain. When it came, it was a simple phrase carried softly across the room: execute. With that, Boulder pushed the throttle on the primary control module. Somewhere above the underground roof, on a camouflaged launch pad hidden among tall wind-swept grasses, a compact Ukrainian aircraft rose into the sky. It looked like an oversized racing drone, its 4 rotors slicing the morning air as it ascended just above the coastal cliffs before diving low over the dark waters. This drone was small, barely the size of a backpack, but engineered to carry a precision payload designed to disable Theta's surveillance systems without requiring a large-scale strike. Boulder's goggles came alive with the drone's live feed. The camera showed the sea stretching endlessly toward the horizon, its waves shifting under the pale morning sun. The wind was moderate, the currents predictable, conditions operators had waited days to catch. For the first 15 kilometers, the drone skimmed the water so closely that the spray occasionally dotted the lens. Every movement Boulder made translated instantly to the drone's course. Subtle tilts to avoid surface chop, short bursts of throttle to clear rising swells, sharp glides to remain beneath detection arcs. This was a region that had eaten dozens of UAV over the past year, but today, conditions favored silence and shadows. At 8:10 a.m., a faint silhouette emerged through the haze far ahead. Platform Theta rose from the sea like a steel cathedral, towering support legs plunging deep into the waves, upper decks filled with machinery, radars, accommodation units, power modules, and defensive stations arranged like a floating fortress. Russian troops moved across the walkways, going about their routine checks, their footsteps echoing through the maze of pipes and platforms. They didn't yet know something small, silent, and precise was already approaching them. Boulder adjusted the drone's altitude, keeping it low and weaving through blind angles. The feed zoomed in on a structure perched near the top, Theta's primary long-range observation array. It was the installation that had allowed Russian operators to track maritime movements across a wide arc of sea. If disabled, Russian control of the region would weaken dramatically. By 8:21, the drone closed to within visual targeting range. Boulder steadied his breathing. Through his goggles, the world narrowed to a single objective. He maneuvered the aircraft sideways along the shadowed underside of the platform, using the dimness to mask the drone's presence. The operators in the bunker watched the telemetry ripple smoothly, battery steady, link stable, winds manageable. Then the drone rose in a sharp arc. Within seconds, Russian guards on the upper deck spotted it. Shouts broke out, and a soldier pointed upward, scrambling for cover, but the drone had already locked onto its aim point. Boulder pushed forward, the aircraft surged ahead, slicing across the final meters. At precisely 8:23 a.m., the drone struck Theta's observation array. A burst flashed across the top deck, bright, sharp, contained, followed by fragments scattering outward. Smoke curled upward as the installation's sensors flickered, then darkened completely. The control crew in the bunker confirmed the hit. The first phase of the operation was complete, but the mission wasn't over. Hundreds of kilometers away at a separate command post, another team watched a different screen. This time the camera belonged to a sleek, fast-moving unmanned vessel gliding through the water at high speed. It resembled a small patrol craft, but its whole design, reinforced frame, and internal payload turned it into something far more formidable. For 20 minutes, it had traveled under low-level guidance, slipping along currents and navigating through sea clutter that masked its presence from distant sensors. Operators tracked its progress carefully, guiding it through pre-mapped segments of open water and blind pockets between natural radar reflections. Platform Theta's defenders were still reacting to the earlier strike when the second drone, larger, faster, and infinitely more destructive, came within 15 kilometers. Smoke from the damaged surveillance array drifted into the sky, obscuring visibility across the platform. Russian personnel scrambled to inspect equipment, report damage, and restore communications. They didn't realize the real threat was closing in rapidly from the southwest. At 8:41 a.m., the vessel's camera sharpened its focus. The platform grew larger, steel beams reflecting glints of sunlight. Operators identified structural vulnerabilities previously marked by reconnaissance, load-bearing columns, power hubs, and junctions between different platform segments. The vessel adjusted its route slightly to angle toward the exact point that would destabilize the structure most effectively. The wind picked up. Waves slapped against the drone's hull. It accelerated. Theta's defenders finally spotted the incoming threat when it was already too close to intercept. Small arms fire erupted from the deck, but the vessel cut through the water at tremendous speed undeterred. At 8:47 a.m., it struck. A massive explosion tore through the lower platform. Fire blossomed upward, racing through pipes and fuel lines. Thick clouds of smoke poured out as structures twisted and buckled. Machinery collapsed in cascading arcs of debris. Flames engulfed the walkways, racing across cables and containers stacked on the upper decks. Within minutes, the platform shuddered violently. Entire sections began to tilt toward the sea. A deep groan echoed across the water as metal warped under the strain. One of the main support towers gave way, sending an enormous portion of the deck crashing downward in a shower of sparks. By 9:02 a.m., the once mighty structure was a fractured skeleton. Fires raged across the remains. Equipment bays burned uncontrollably. Communications towers lay in twisted heaps. The upper deck leaned at an impossible angle, half submerged. Satellite images captured the aftermath over the following hours. Platform Theta reduced to a broken mass of steel jutting from the waves, smoke rising into the sky like a black banner. It was a sight that had dominated the region for months, but in under an hour, through two precise, coordinated strikes, it had been rendered useless. The operation demonstrated how agility, creativity, and technological adaptation had reshaped modern conflict. It wasn't just firepower that defined battles now, it was timing, intelligence, and the ability to exploit weaknesses with ingenuity rather than overwhelming force. In this new era, the side that masters innovation controls the battlefield, no matter how small the tool or how vast the sea around it.